It is Thursday here on the Locked On Network. We are joined by Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys to get you ready for Week 16, Dallas at Miami. Two conference two seeds going at it with big-time playoff implications.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Thursday on the Locked On Network, and that means it is time for another crossover Thursday, this time an AFC-NFC crossover for a heavyweight matchup in the playoff picture. The Dallas Cowboys visiting Hard Rock Stadium to play the Miami Dolphins, 2-10-4 football teams. I'm Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. He is Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. And we got you covered here. This crossover Thursday episode on the Locked On Network is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase for a first deposit match of up to $100. Marcus, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this game. The Cowboys and Dolphins don't get to play very often, but when they do, at least historically, these have been some really fun games. I cannot wait for Christmas Eve.
Yeah, everybody thinks of, at least on our end of things, they think of Leon Lett touching that field goal in the snow on Thanksgiving. And
I remember the Chris Chambers game on Thanksgiving where he had a massive game. That one always sticks in my mind.
I think that's the last time the Dolphins actually beat the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys have taken the last four head-to-head in this series. So that Jason Taylor pick six, Chris Chambers blow-up game in the throwbacks is the last time I believe the Dolphins won in this head-to-head matchup. So, but no shortage of storylines on either side. So I guess I would ask you, Marcus, what's the biggest storyline right now in Dallas amid the playoff push?
I mean, there's a couple. We could start with the Cowboys' run defense, which was not great against the Bills last week, to say the least. But to me, it's their road struggles. And I think that's the more concerning thing for me going forward, because you look at the NFC playoff picture, pretty likely the Cowboys are going to be the 5 seed, which means you're going to have to play on the road throughout the playoffs. They've really struggled on the road this year. They got blown out by the Cardinals. They got blown out by the 49ers. They lost a close game to the Eagles in Philadelphia. And now they got blown out by the Bills. And you're facing another really good team on the road here in Week 16. I don't know what it is about this Cowboys team that makes them so different when they're on the road compared to at home, but it's a concern, Kyle. Like I'm really nervous about how this team performs on the road.
Yeah, and obviously Dallas caught a little bit of a break with Philadelphia dropping the game on Monday night to Seattle, so there's still that optics of, hey, if we win our games, you still have a chance at the NFC East. At least you feel like it. So you'd like to think from Dallas's perspective, there'd be some motivating factors there, knowing that you held the Eagles helped you hold serve, even though you lost your game against the Bills. From Miami's side of things, the front row center conversation is the status of Tyreek Hill. Obviously, he was putting together what was considered to be as good of an MVP candidate that you could possibly have as a non-quarterback in the league these days, and was on pace for more than 2,000 yards. And he re-injures an ankle. He's been dealing with some lower body injuries throughout the course of the season. Early in the game against Tennessee, that Monday night collapse where the Dolphins blow 14-point lead in the final 4 minutes of the football game. And they really looked out of sorts without Tyreek. Now, the Dolphins managed to put together a game plan that featured Jalen Waddle the following week against a good Jets defense. And you certainly feel like it eased the waters a little bit about the concerns about the offense operating without Tyreek Hill. But nevertheless, a player of Tyreek Hill's caliber, when he's on the field, you could even just watch the Jets and their plan without Hill on the field, and things were much more compressed. They played much lower to the line of scrimmage, and so much of what Miami likes to do is predicated on spacing, and they can space the field at a certain degree when you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the field simultaneously because of all the speed. You can keep more eligibles in to protect, but still get good spacing against zone coverage because you have to respect the vertical element of those two receivers. So that for Miami is, I think, the front row center. There's certainly other conversations and big time storylines just like Dallas has going on, and I'd love to hear another one from you. But that's the big one for Miami is Tyreek going to suit up after not playing against the Jets last week?
Yeah. I actually have a question for you about this Miami
Yeah.
offensive line, because from afar, Cowboy fans, I think, were really excited and happy to see Connor Williams playing so well at center. He was somebody
Yeah.
that the fans really liked. Such a bummer when he got hurt in that Tennessee game. Now they've got Liam Eichenberg playing center. How do you think this offensive line matches up against somebody like the Cowboys defensive line that has DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons and Oso Digizua? Do you think that could be an issue for the Dolphins in this game?
Yeah, they've been tested by better defensive fronts. And I think for Miami's sake, they're looking at right guard Robert Hunt and hoping that he's back. Because when the interior trio is Lester Cotton, Liam Eichenberg, Rob Jones, it's a pretty athletically limited group. Now, Robert Hunt it came into the year and was generally considered to be their best interior offensive lineman. He's been dealing with a hamstring issue, missed a few games, re-aggravated it against Washington, and then missed Tennessee and missed again against the Jets. Mike McDaniel left it open early in the week that this may be the week for Rob Hunt to come back. And I think if he does come back, it gives you a little bit of fortification to be able to hold up inside. I think this group can really work around one limiting factor, but if you have both guards or athletically limited players, you saw the Dolphins against the Jets. They did a lot of 6 and 7 man protections and were trying to manufacture double teams for both guys inside to give them a little help. I guess the good news is Teron Armstead is healthy and playing, and Austin Jackson sounds like that's not going to be something that limits him from playing as well. And if it is, Kendall Lamb's been pretty solid as a swing tackle. Yeah. So not that that's going to give you answers against Micah Parsons. Ideally, you attack Micah Parsons the same way they attacked Max Crosby, which was a lot of extra attention with a tackle and then eligible with chip releases or turning the center to that side so that you had the inside bumper of the guard for protection. So I know from Dan Quinn's perspective, there's going to be a big time chess match there with how the Dolphins, who they have inside, what that allows them to do to help with the tackles on the outside against Micah, and then how Quinn moves his rush plan around to attack the Dolphins' protection.
By the way, Cowboy fans that don't know, Robert Hunt is the guy that scored the greatest touchdown in NFL history that didn't count.
It never was.
You probably remember that game. One more quick storyline for the Cowboys. They have been a team that's been really good at bouncing back after losses, not only just this year, but during the Mike McCarthy era. Dak Prescott has played really well after a loss. His record after a loss is absolutely unbelievable. I think his game against Buffalo was arguably the worst game that he's played over the last 2 years in the regular season. I want to see how he bounces back in this game. The only issue that I have, and we can talk about this a little bit more in the matchup, historically, he's really struggled against Vic Fangio in that style of defense. We know that Miami's getting a little healthier on that side of the ball, outside of obviously our guy Jalen Phillips not playing because of his Achilles injury. I want to see how Dak plays against this Fangio style of defense that has historically given him a lot of issues. If the Cowboys struggle on offense again, I think I'm going to start getting concerned about how they match up against some of the better teams in the playoffs. This is going to be an excellent test for the Cowboys on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and the Dolphins on that side of the ball, as you mentioned, Jalen Phillips down with the Achilles tear. They had both starting safeties were out against the Jets. Deshaun Elliott was in concussion protocol. Javon Holland has missed a few weeks with sprained MCL. He's fringe. Would not be surprised if he's back, but also would not be surprised if he does not play in this game. Mike McDaniel alluded to on Monday when he met with the media that Xavier Howard, who did not dress versus the Jets, was very close to playing. He went through a pregame workout, and I think all expectations are provided that there's no setbacks with the hip injury that he suffered against Tennessee, that he will be a go against the Cowboys as well. As obviously this is rubber meets the road time, and guys got to determine, are you hurt or are you injured? Because there's so much at stake here for obviously both of these teams playing for divisional title opportunities, playoff seeding implications. Both teams play extremely good football at home, and there's a lot on the line for this matchup. We'll talk a little bit more about the specific matchups in this game up next year on this Crossover Thursday, so stick with us. The weather may be getting cooler, but the NFL offers stay hot over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers over at FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets if your winning $5 money line hits. It's $150 for one $5 money line bet. If you like good return on investment, this is a great opportunity for you over at FanDuel. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. They have a slew of betting options that include money lines, the spread, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off your remainder of the NFL season with some fun. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, Marcus, the most enticing matchup to you, the most intriguing one would be what?
Going into this week, I would have said Zack Martin against Christian Wilkins, who, by the way, I think is like one of the most underrated defensive players in the league. Like, I know he's a Pro Bowl caliber player, but I just don't think people understand just how good Wilkins really is. But now I don't know if Zack Martin's going to play. He suffered a quad injury against Buffalo. I mean, it's one of those deep thigh bruises, which if you're a dad before and you ever got kicked in the leg playing with your kid, that's exactly what it feels like. It sucks. It takes forever for those things to get better. Listen, we're recording this on Wednesday. I don't anticipate him playing. We'll see what the practice report is. So that means it's going to be TJ Bass, an undrafted rookie out of Oregon, who was a left tackle in college, making the transition to guard. I thought he was fine against Buffalo, but this is a different animal. Going up against this defensive front that they're going to do a bunch of wild things. I'm really concerned about the interior offensive line of the Cowboys against Miami's, Wilkins. And if they want to move Chubb inside, it really terrifies me in this one, Kyle.
Yeah, and Zach Sealer's made splash play after splash play the last couple of weeks as well. Had the pick six on the
screen. Back-to-back touchdowns.
Tennessee.
He should have had back-to-back touchdowns. It's incredible.
He was this far away from not being touched and being down when he picked up that fumble from Zach Wilson early in that game on Sunday. But yeah, I think that's a great call. Wilkins and Sealer combined have, I think, 15 and a half sacks on the season. Sealer's gotten a contract extension. Wilkins is playing for his. He's probably going to get mid-20s per year when he gets his new contract, whoever that's with. He's doubled his career high in sacks this season already with a few games left to play. So he bet on himself by not taking the offer the Dolphins gave him, and it's looking like it's going to pay off after he started a little slow at the beginning of the season. But I'm glad you went to the Dolphins defense, because the matchup that I'm most fascinated in is what the Dolphins did for the first time against the Jets. And I'm curious if they choose to do it against Dallas, which is cornerback Jalen Ramsey. He traveled with Garrett Wilson through the first 3 quarters of the football game. They hadn't done that all year. And they've been asking all year long, are you guys going to play matchups? And it was generally been, we got a left corner, we got a right corner, and we got a nickel. And the nickel is going to travel to the passing strength, and that's going to be it. And then once Xavier Howard went down 90 minutes before the game, they apparently decided that they were going to travel Jalen Ramsey with Garrett Wilson for the majority of that game while it was still up in the air. And the Fangio defense for Miami, it's about as big of an ideological shift as you could have from what they played previously with Brian Flores and Josh Boyer as the defensive coordinator to this. And the first month of the season was very vanilla. They had the fallout against Buffalo. Buffalo scored 48 points on them because they were without one of their starting safeties. They had a bunch of coverage communication breakdowns. And just as this year has gone on, you've seen them add extra layers, an extra layer here, an extra layer there. And now you have an element of a corner who travels with a receiver. And I'm fascinated to see if they choose to do that with CD. Obviously, you've had Brandon Cooks, who has stepped up over the past month or so and made some plays. And Jake Ferguson is an underneath player I think is really underrated. I really liked him coming out of Wisconsin. So I'm happy to see him having the successes that he has. But so much of the passing volume goes through CD. I'm interested in seeing if they play that game or not, or if they're content to not move and travel players instead, if they feel like that's going to help their communication on the back end against Dallas.
And I actually think that's something that the Cowboys would welcome. I think they would. Listen, I love Jalen Ramsey, but I think putting CeeDee Lamb in the slot and having Ramsey go one-on-one probably would help Dallas because of all the different things they can do to get CD open. That's an interesting matchup. We've actually seen before other teams, or when the Cowboys have played Ramsey in the past, they'll stick him on Michael Gallup on the outside and basically just take that receiver away. Don't give him any safety help. So that's one that I'm really interested in seeing. I was going to make a bad joke about some revenge games, Cedric Wilson against Noah Igbenogany, but Noah really never plays, so we don't need to worry about that. But I do want to mention, if Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are both playing, and Waddle we'll see about Tyreek, can the Cowboys contain the others on offense? Don't give up big plays to Cedric Wilson. Don't let Durham Smythe make plays in the receiving game. That's been one of their issues this year when they have struggled on defense, is they've let kind of the supporting cast members have big games. Tyreek is going to go off for a long touchdown. Waddle's going to make plays in the middle of the field and get yards after the catch. They've got to limit those other players in order to slow down this Miami offense.
Well, and then I think the extra layer here too that I'm really fascinated is I know Dallas is pretty banged up at linebacker, and they've been able to get Devon Achane now involved in the passing game a little bit. He obviously made the big splash early in the season, had an IR stint, came back, got bumped up again, but he's played in the last 2 games, and he's somebody who you can see they have a very clear third down and passing game package for him. And with Dallas, I know they're banged up with Leighton Vander Esch. I believe Damon Clark went down against Buffalo at one stretch, so I'm not sure what his status is. I know Malik Hooker is just another middle of the field defender, didn't play against Buffalo. So how they choose to do you pick your poison and take the stuff underneath and trust yourself to rally and tackle against the underneath players if they're the backs involved in the passing game and play softer, or do you play with fire a little bit as far as making sure you're more probably evenly spacing the field and daring a team like Miami to go up over the top and beat you, I think is another one of the things that I'm really fascinated to see how Dan Quinn is going to approach it, because I think Quinn has had so many game plans where I've come out of watching a game for Dallas and I'm like, he did a really nice job of prioritizing the right thing and pushing the right button. And I want to know what Dan Quinn's button to push is for this game based on who they're going to have that's going to be up and able to go.
Yeah, so the Cowboys have lost 4 linebackers since the start of the year. Leighton Vander Esch, Demario Overshawn, their 3rd-round pick this year, Jabril Cox, and Devin Harper. Damone Clark, one of their starting linebackers, he's a second-year guy. You mentioned he got banged up. I expect him to play. But the other The other linebacker in this game is Marquise Bell, who they moved from safety to linebacker in September. He's the one that had a lot of problems against Buffalo because they ran right at him. He couldn't get off blocks. Now, he's been a really good player this year. Kyle was actually one of PFF's top-rated linebackers for most of the season, but he's a sideline-to-sideline player. He wants to run and make tackles. If you can get bodies on him, that's when he struggles. And then after those 2 guys, there's nothing at linebacker for the Cowboys. That's it. And you mentioned Malik Hooker. He was out last week. We'll see if he plays this week. The Cowboys missed, I believe the number was 17 tackles last week. Going into week 15, they were the number 1 tackling team in the league in terms of fewest missed tackles. Raheem Mostert and Achane, they're absolutely fantastic players. Over 2,000 rushing yards combined, 27 touchdowns. A little nervous about that matchup.
Yeah, it's really, and everything's never as bad as it feels or as good as it feels, right? So Miami coming off a 30-0 shutout against a Jets team where they were missing 8 starters off that. Dallas gets punched in the mouth against Buffalo. So it feels like it's this, but in reality, I don't feel particularly good about this game either. From my perspective, I see the pathway for the Miami to win the game, but it's also one of those games where Dallas, I think, has so much to play for. They're trying to break a narrative. The Dolphins are trying to break a narrative. There's so much leverage and Dallas is going to have a chance to see what went wrong last week and try to adjust. And I think that's one of the big advantages that they have in this game is they saw where the blueprint went wrong. And it's not like Miami can just Xerox the game plan that Buffalo had and said, yeah, we're going to do the exact same thing. They're going to have their own spin on it, and they're going to have to try to stay ahead of what Dallas is trying to adjust for. And that for me is, it's like, I think this is a coin toss game, and I think the spread reflects that. But I could totally see this game breaking either way, not to get ahead of ourselves and do the keys to victory before the keys to victory.
No, I will mention one more thing. The good news for the Cowboys is that Dan Quinn has a lot of experience against this style of offense. Obviously, the last 3 years playing the 49ers, coaching with Kyle Shanahan, coaching with Mike McDaniel. The bad news is that he's got a lot of experience against these guys, and it's not been great on his side of the ball. So I'm really interested in seeing that chess match. What does Dan Quinn do differently in this game to try to shut down this style of offense compared to what he's done in the past against Kyle Shanahan? Should be fantastic to see.
Well, we are going to talk about the keys to victory here as we continue this crossover Thursday. Make sure that you stick with us. But don't do so on an empty stomach. You don't want to root for your team on an empty stomach either. It's why you got to order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites, whether you're ordering from your favorite restaurant or if you're prepping for your tailgate and you want to make sure you have all the materials that you need. So if you're in Miami, you are probably looking for the tailgate to go down to the Rock. I know some people think there's a lot of Cowboys fans that are going to turn out for this game. So if you're traveling or if you're in South Florida and you're a Cowboys fan, make sure you check out DoorDash and get all of your retail stuff for your tailgate as well. But if you're watching from home, there's no reason to eat. Wait till about 11:30. You can find all of your favorite local restaurants on DoorDash. Get your favorite lunch. Wait till halftime. Order yourself dinner. Hopefully it's a victory meal after the game for either side. We'll see who takes care of business. But you can get 50% off on DoorDash up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. So download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. That's save up to $10 or 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. Subject to change and terms do apply. I always love, Marcus, the keys to victory element, because the first place that my mind goes when we do it is that low-hanging fruit of like score in the red zone or don't turn the ball, like win the turnover battle, right? Like be good on third downs. Like there's all of these cliches. And every time I get ready and we're transitioning to keys to victory, even though I have other stuff, my brain still switches to just win the turnover battle, right? And you'll take care of business.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to hear from your perspective, the one thing that has to go right for Dallas to win the game on Sunday against Miami.
To me, it's their first down run defense. When the Cowboys get teams in second and long and third and long, there's no better team in the league. Like Dan Quinn is so good at getting pressure. His stunt rate is the highest in the league. Their pressure rate is the highest in the league. Teams just cannot live against the Cowboys in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. But all we've seen in the games that the Cowboys have lost this year, teams are just running the ball on 1st and 2nd down to get to 3rd and short. And against Buffalo, they weren't even getting to 3rd down because they were having so much success in 1st down. Will the Dolphins stay committed to the run game? Will they have success on 1st down in the run game if the Cowboys start to stack the box a little bit more than what they did last week? That's not really Dan Quinn's MO. He does not like to put a lot of extra defenders in the box. I'm really curious to see after that performance on Sunday, what does the Cowboys run defense look like in early downs against Miami?
Yeah. And I think for Miami, the counterpunch off of that, the biggest thing that I had was the screen game, because if you are going to be limited on the interior and you don't have a lot of success with your early rushing down success. And they had stacked together a couple of really good performances in the run game prior. They had 167 against the Jets the first time. They went for 123 against the Commanders, including a 14-play drive where they ran the ball 13 times late in the game. And then they had 158 against Tennessee. It dropped to 77 against the Jets. And a lot of that was, they got on top of them early, so they kind of played it close to the vest, and it kind of became a little bit more of a rugby scrum game. They also had a couple of explosive runs that were pulled off the board because of penalties. So that first down rushing success, I think Miami's going to want to continue to run the ball. They called more runs than passes against the Jets, and that's not Mike McDaniel's deal at all, even though his background's a run game coordinator. But if Dallas does have the answers, getting your skill players, your explosive skill players on the perimeter, the ball, and getting blocks set up for them is critical. And it's been when Miami has had to have that change of pace, they've shown it as an extension of the running game, but with the backup interior offensive lineman, that gets tested because they don't have the same range. They can't get outside of the numbers and hit a block on a smaller body the way that Isaiah Wynn was earlier in the season, or Connor Williams was getting out there and picking up guys in space, or Robert Hunt. So that for me is the key, is if you don't have the rushing success early, you have to find what designs for your screen game you can get going to continue to keep Dallas off balance, because the worst thing you can do is fall into a super pass happy attack where a Diggy Zua inside and Lawrence and Parsons can really fly up the field and try and get after your quarterback.
Yeah, and I fully expect the Cowboys in this game to use more bigger defensive ends to help stop the run, and then line Micah Parsons up over Liam Eichenberg, who just doesn't have that same quickness as Connor Williams, and try to get Tua to move off his spot. That's going to be how the Cowboys win in this game, is by creating quick interior pressure. And I'm curious to see what Miami's offensive line looks like in this one. Is there any other matchups that you're excited to see?
I think when Dallas has the ball, it feels like we've been pretty skewed towards Dallas D versus Miami O. But when Dallas has the football, I think the other matchup that I'm really looking forward to is these Dolphins linebackers in coverage against Pollard and Ferguson, where David Long was a free agent signing from Tennessee. He's been outstanding this year. He's one of the highest rated run defenders in all of football at the off-ball linebacker position. And the other spot is Duke Riley, who stepped in for Jerome Baker. He got injured against the Commanders, and I'll be darned if Duke Riley's not playing some pretty darn good football right now. Now, he's not a bigger body, so that's for if Dallas can create some surge and push and reset the line of scrimmage and get up into the lap of these guys, I think that's where they can really create some chunk gains in the run game. But if they're in passing situations, I think Riley and Long have the opportunity to match up well, and I'm eager to see them and how they meet that opportunity, because I do think if Miami ends up funneling and clouding against CD, and they put Ramsey on one side and they give two bodies with attention to CD, and you're leaving these other one-on-one matchups, you look at where Dallas's passing volume goes otherwise, and it's guys like that in the middle of the field that you got to be ready to defend, and you got to be ready to tackle and step up at the catch point. So that's the other matchup when Dallas has the ball for me I'm looking forward to. Do
you remember who drafted Duke Riley? Dan Quinn when he was with the Falcons.
Dan Quinn
so
with the Falcons. He knows him.
Yeah, it's been a while since Duke Riley's played meaningful snaps. So it's cool to see him finally, after all these years, having success. But I agree. I think the Cowboys, they love to attack the middle of the field. I think you're going to see a lot of Jake Ferguson in this game. You'll probably see some Rico Dowdle as a receiver out of the backfield. I got to believe that after last week, the Cowboys are going to try to be more consistent getting the ball in the middle of the field.
Yeah. Do you offer, I know everybody's a little different here, do you offer score predictions? Do you offer game predictions? Sure. I'm totally open-ended. I got it all prepped. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I don't see the Cowboys having a ton of success on defense in this game. I think Miami is going to really be able to run the ball to the edges. And I think the play action game, which has killed the Cowboys all year, it's going to rear its ugly head in this one. So I've got Miami scoring 31, and I'll go Dallas 26.
Okay.
Part of me, really quick, Kyle, this game does not matter as much for Dallas as it matters for Miami, for the reason that the Cowboys need Philadelphia to lose a game to the Giants in order to win the division. If the Cowboys were to lose this week and win the next two, and the Giants drop one game, the Cowboys are winning that. They're winning the NFC East. Believe it or not, this is not a super important game for Dallas.
Yeah, other than if you're trying to catch San Francisco, which we know is not happening either, right?
They don't have a tiebreaker anyway. Yep. So right. Really, it's more of the narrative. You want to play well because you had a bad game against Buffalo. You want to show that you can win on the road. But in terms of like who needs this game more for playoffs and playoff seeding, it's probably Miami.
Yeah, that's the psychological element here is I believe Dallas clinched before they played, right?
Yep.
Last week.
They're basically going to be the 5 seed at worst. They have still a chance to win the division, but they know they're already in.
And Miami comes into this game knowing if they win the game, they clinch a playoff berth. And they need to win 2 out of the last 3 to clinch the AFC East. So they have not done the psychological we're in the dance thing yet. So I think knowing that that's on the horizon may be an extra boost to Miami. I had it 24-23 Miami. I think it's like I mentioned coin toss. I don't get warm and fuzzies about it, but I see the pathway for both teams to win this game. Obviously, if Dak Prescott can bounce back and play to the caliber he's been playing the prior 5-6 games before the game against Buffalo. I think everything's on the table. It should be a good one. And it's at 425. It's at Hard Rock Stadium in South Florida. The Cowboys and the Dolphins facing off 2 10-4 football teams. What more could you possibly ask for late in the season? We enjoy catching up, or at least Marcus, I didn't want to speak for you, but it was good catching up with you. And we hope everybody enjoys the game. Here's to a healthy game, and we hope everybody enjoys. You can catch Marcus on Locked On Cowboys after the game for everything you need in the post game. You can catch me for Locked On Dolphins for all of your post-game stuff. And check out all the shows that we have on the Locked On Network. We have an outstanding network. Every team, every day, every sport, you name it, it's there. But that's going to do it for this crossover. We appreciate you guys for checking in.